Alright, so a brief overview before I start. I noticed that on NovelKeys, a few months ago, they stocked some switches under the brand of Everglide. Now, I have seen these switches before, but only on like Chinese-based markets, such as KP Republic, AliExpress, yada yada yada. And they were going for a pretty steep price of around, I think, $7.90, $8.90 per switch. Sorry, not per switch. Sorry, oh my god. Per batch of 10. So I didn't initially pick these up, but I know that some people did. Some notable people are called Walker's Keyboard Science. We have the Board Podcast, and we have New Boards, which is spelled NU Boards. And the switches and the reviews that they gave were pretty polarizing. For example, Walker's Keyboard Science was saying that you should probably save up for Zeal switches, and that the Board Podcast described them as similar to Alias. And both of them gave pretty negative reviews, saying that they had issues with just being kind of underwhelming, and also Walker's Keyboard Science managed to swipe his finger across the keyboard, and the keycaps just fucking flew off, which I found hilarious, by the way. But NU Keyboards actually gave them a pretty positive review, saying that they had a place in the community because not everyone can afford, hate to say it, but top tier switches like Zeal switches, where Telios was unmatched in smoothness at the time. I don't think he took any Gateron inks though, but who knows. So he described them as a pretty good alternative to them, especially when you can buy 3 of the Amber Oranges or whatever Zeal or whatever Everglide switches you can for 1 Zeal switch. So I'm assuming in Korea these things are cheaper. So when NovelKeys stocked these for only $5 per 10 switches, I decided to buy some to test if any of these claims were true and if they have improved or not. So I did. So the 2 switches I'll be looking at today are going to be the Oreo Switch. Let's focus the camera here. There we go. So we have the Oreo Switch, which is the second most heavy option for tactile switches under the Everglide NovelKeys lineup. And we have the Ampere Orange, which is also a linear switch, which is also the second most heavy on the lineup with around, I think, a 58 gram bottom out force with 50 or 45 actuation, with the Oreos being 50 and 58 respectively. So I'm going to look at these in 2 ways. I'm going to look at these in stock form, how are they like out of the bag, and how are these lubed. So if you want to skip to the lubed portion, go to this timestamp if you already have figured out how these are out of the box, or out of the bag, however you want to say it. So without further ado, I'm going to look at the linear option, which is my Amber Oranges, and my tactile switches after that. So let's start. I'm going to be comparing them to NovelKeys Creams, which I have in the same shipment here. And I'll also be comparing it to Gateron switches, which are the cheaper options. So this is in the middle. So let's start off the bat. The one thing I really like about these Everglide switches is that out of the bag performance is impressive as fuck. For, again, $5 for a batch of 10. I genuinely thought these things were lubed out of the factory, and I think NU Keyboards mentioned that they actually were, albeit only on the spring, and it was kind of inconsistent. But this is the 3rd switch that I took out of the bag, and I noticed that the consistency of the smoothness for all of them was there. However, there's also a thing in which that he was worried about the fact that the contact leaves, like the Gateron inks of yesteryear, when you push them, they could fall out. So I tried those on the first 2, and it didn't seem to be the case. Maybe I just have a god batch. Maybe that I just got lucky with my switches. But as of now, I'm very impressed by Everglide switches. So here's to a sound test. Now, these need to be switch filmed, obviously. These things rattle like a motherfucker. So just like Alias switches and any other switch that require a lot of firmness after you took it apart, even if it's also just stock, I need to switch from these to have a proper judge as to how they feel compared to other lube switches. But as of out of the box, they sound really good, and they also feel very good. Here's a listen. And you notice off the bat that there is almost no spring ping, which is a major plus. And the smoothness in which that I press the stem down also is very, very smooth. It's almost as if these things were pre-lubed and not just in the spring. So I decided to compare it to a NovelKeys cream that is all the fucking rage right now, and I have no idea why. Well, actually, no, I know why. Fucking Teha, dude. Tifu, fuck you. So listen to these real quick. Here's another sample from the oranges. And listen to the NovelKeys cream in comparison. These things are fucking scratchy. There is no way around it. The only reason why you would buy NovelKeys cream switches is because if you want the sound. And I can definitely acknowledge that. Creams have a very bassy sound signature, and I love them for that. Even though that their smoothness is not that great. Like, I even lubed these, and I'll actually provide a lube sample in later on in the video. And they're not that great, but the sound, So let's put some keycaps on these bad boys. I'm gonna be using profile. I'm gonna be using the R4 profile, or the R1, I forgot. Where the spacebar row basically. I'm gonna put these on both of them. So here is one on here, and here's one on here. So we have Control, and we have Alt. Alt is the Amber Orange, Control is the cream, Savor cream, I guess. And so let's listen to these real quick. You can hear that scratch, right? Now let's listen to Amber Orange. It's night and day. These definitely just blow these out of the water. And considering, again, broken record, $5 for a batch of 10 versus $6.50 for a batch of 10. I honestly think that if you don't care about sound and you just want smoothness, and you can't buy Gateron inks, and you definitely can't buy Utilios, buy Everglides, for the love of God. But, of course, you can't really beat out value in terms of smoothness with the NovelKeys Gateron switches. God, these things are legendary. Freaking, with the milky top and the black bottom, put a little bit of lube in there, and you're good to go. For $2.40 for a batch of 10, you can't go wrong with these, and I'm pretty sure the rest of the community agrees with me. These things are great. Okay, so let's move on to the tactile switches, or specifically in this case, the Oreo switches. And I'll say right now off the bat, I'm going to be comparing these to a Cherry Mix Brown just to see how the tactility compares. And when I lube these, I'll be comparing it to a Holy Panda, courtesy of my friend James. Now, the one thing I noticed out of the box, again, the Amber Orange and the Oreo that I hold in my hands right now are actually the third switch to come out of the bag. And these have been in a consistent quality throughout the three that I've tested. And it's in a good way because, again, the Oreo Switch also has the same quality as the Amber Orange, where there is almost no spring ping, and the smoothness in which the stem goes down and up is also pretty fucking good for an out-of-box or out-of-bag switch. In fact, I think it's even better than average. So let's take a look at the tactility. Actually, no. Let's take a look at the tactility for a Cherry MX Brown first. I did show this off in the TTC video, where I compared the TTC Red and Browns to Cherry MX Brown and Gateron Red. And in this case, let's just review it real quick. So how I judge tactility is putting my finger on the switch, using my nail, my finger, and just lightly pressing and feeling for the bump. And of course, Cherry MX Browns have a very small bump. It's no secret. It's pretty fucking not tactile. But if you want the whisper of tactility, then go ahead, pick these up. I'm not judging, but that's not the topic of this video. Now, let's take a look at the bump right here. So we have travel, bump, travel, 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 bump, travel, travel, bump, travel. So we have a little bit here, and then here's the tiny bump right here. Bump, 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 bump. Lots of travel, back to the bump, 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 and travel. Now compare these to the Oreo switches, and we got a completely different ballpark. Just like the TTC switches, and pretty much almost every other tactile switch out there right now, there is almost no pre-travel, if not no pre-travel, if any pre-travel at all. The bump starts from the top. It's a very round, large bump that you can clearly see, almost goes down to where the cherry MX brown bottomed down. So here we go. Bump. Look at that shit. That is a round bump. You can probably gauge. You can see the notch in the stem right here. See if you can see how far that goes down. That is a big bump. And of course, almost every switch out there is trying to mimic Holy Pandas and Tactility right now. And I'd say this is a very good alternative to one if you don't want to spend $1 or $2 per switch. So here's a tiny treble and a bump right here. And I love them for that. Goodness me. So let's take a look at these with keycaps on. So again, I'll be putting these Alt and Control buttons on. So here's how they sound with keycaps on. Here's an Oreo. Oops. And here we go with a Cherry MX Brown. Keep in mind this Cherry MX Brown is also lubed, so keep that in mind. So again, for the 100th time, or $5 per batch of 10 switches on NovelKeys, they're a fucking steal, dude. I don't understand. Maybe it's because of those initial reviews that these switches were not picked up upon, but I personally see these like as a very good alternative to pretty much any other switch you want to buy that's like on the hype right now. So if you don't want to shell out too much for, say, Gateron inks, Telios, or NovelKeys creams, go for these. If you don't want the Gateron yellows, oops, not those, these. And if you don't want to spend all the money on Holy Panda, Zeal Switch V2, or like whatever tactile switch there is out there, then pick some of these up for, again, $5 per patch 10. And considering I just showed you how much of a bump there is, I don't see a reason why you shouldn't pick these up, at least to test out. They're not that expensive. It's $5 for 10 switches. Like, there's so many other switches out there that probably are a lot more expensive, such as the ones I listed before. And considering literally no one touched these before, I'm glad to say that these things are just underrated. The molds are great. At least that's what I've been told by my friend who also bought a batch of 10 and tested them out. And the value is just there. So without further ado, let's look at the performance when you lube and switch from them. Okay, so here we go. I finally lubed and switch filmed a lot of these, and I'm glad to say that the lube fine-tunes these switches. So let's take a look at this for now. At the moment, I have a Everglide Coral Red, which is the heaviest switch-on option. If I can focus, please. There you go. So I'll again be focusing on comparing these to a switch filmed and lubed Gateron Yellow from NovelKeys and also a NovelKeys Cream. You can see the switch film right there. And I lubed these with Krytox 206 with some GPL oil, otherwise known as Gazoo Mix. So here we have a switch filmed and lubed cream. So let's just look at these without the keycaps on. No more rattle, no more anything. It's amazing. Now let's take a look at the lube performance of the NovelKeys Cream with switch film and Krytox 206. You can still hear the scratch in there, but of course it's going to be bassier because it's NovelKeys Cream. Now I'll compare it to a Gateron Yellow with Krytox 206 in it as well. Same mix. So you can hear that there's less, but still a bit of scratch in there, versus these things that just became pretty much godly. You can just hear it topping out, but that's it. And I admire that. It's amazing. So let's put some keycaps on. I got 3 of these. We have Alt, we also have FN, and we also have Control. So I'm going to put the Amber Orange on the Alt, A for that, Control for Cream, and we also have Gateron Yellow, so I'll put it as Function, because of course, these use function like a motherfucker. XD. So let's compare these to the Amber Orange. So oh fuck, Jesus. So again, Amber Orange, NovelKeys Cream. You can hear the scratch, but of course they're going to be bassier. Let's compare this to a Gateron Yellow. Almost similar, really. Let's do these side by side. Pretty good. So again, just buy some switch films for these, lube them up with whatever kind of lube you want, whether it be TX oil, Krytox, GPL, I don't give a fuck. And these will be probably the best $5 you spent on a mid-tier switch. Now let's compare the Oreos with the Holy Panda. Ultimate test, really. So I lubed these again with Krytox 206. You can see the switch foam right there. And let's compare these without the keycaps on. Focus, please. There we go. Holy Panda. Okay, so the first thing I noticed was that the Oreos, when lubed, actually went a little bit down in tactility. So I suggest lubing the spring along with the rails, but don't lube the stem. I did not lube the legs, and it still was reduced in tactility. I'm not sure how that worked. However, it does pronounce a bit better because of the fact that it's switch filmed, so it doesn't rattle as much. Of course, the Holy Panda is still going to be the king here. It's not the most tactile switch in the world, that's a bullshit claim, but it is very respectable for what is the quote-unquote holy grail of tactile switches in the modern age. So we have these, and this is a lot more rounded in tactility. I can respect these because I can see why people are kind of like fanboying and fangirling over these because of the fact that the tactility here is very round and very pronounced. There's no way you can look at this and be like, oh, maybe it's a linear switch? Nah, dude, because the tactile leaf, I'm pretty sure, with both the weight alongside the tactile leaf, makes these things a very elongated tactility. It's a very round and satisfying bump that isn't mimicked in almost any other switch. Maybe a T1, but even then, I don't think the sound profile matches them. But with the Oreo, it's kind of there. It's not as round, but it is still there, and I can appreciate it for what it does. And considering it's literally half the price of one of these, if you just can't afford the Holy Panda, but you still want good tactility, buy some of the Everglides. So, again, tactile, not that expensive, and readily available. Because I know that these boys, you need to wait for some of these. So let's put some keycaps on these. There we go. So here's an Everglide Oreo with switch films and 206 with a keycap on it. Very muted, seems like. It's kind of afraid to show its sound, but the tactility is still there. You can see my finger like resonating with it. Of course, the Holy Panda is going to beat this one out, though, if you don't consider price. This is a big, fat fuck right there. And I actually enjoy that a lot. Thank you, James, for picking one of these up for me. I'll put this in my Gateron board very soon. So let's do these side by side. So again, of course, I can't, this is like, man, did I just fall for these? So the Holy Pandas, yeah, they're going to be costing you $1 plus per switch, and you have to wait for these, versus the Everglides, where the tactility is not as round, but it's still very pronounced, and for half the price, and probably always going to be readily available because no one knows about these things. Hello? I'd say these are a pretty good switch for 50 cents, but I do think the linears will offer more in terms of value, because there are a lot of tactile switches out there that you can buy for around the same price. For example, we have T1s, we have Ampere, we have T1s, we have Zelios V2s and V1s, while the V1s are discontinued. We also do have Cherry MX Clears, so you can make them ergo. You can also have Alp switches, the list goes on. Okay, I'm just blank. I'm drawing a blank because it's 1:49 a.m. But to be fair with you, if you again want to only spend $5 as your max budget, and you want good tactility switches or good smoothness for linear switches, but I still think these things serve a purpose. It's kind of like the GTX 1060 of switches. There's obviously better graphics cards out there, such as the 1080, the 2000 series, but it's not like something as low as, say, a GTX 240 or a GT 750. It's just in the middle of the pack, fairly priced, and it's ready for you to use, and it just wants to be used, as no one's fucking buying them. I own a 1660 Ti myself. I know how that feels. So with all that being said, are these switches worth your time now? Because of the fact that perhaps there were some revisions done, or maybe because of the fact that they just have sunk in price? I say yes, because I myself am going to use these now in some boards. Not full builds, obviously, but they could take up some slots in my modifier keys or some arrow keys or my escape key, because I just like them that much. They provide good value, and for $5 for 10, I don't see why you wouldn't buy it. Anyway, that's all I have. Any more questions, post them in the comments, and I'll be sure to do some more of these soon. And I'm also still working on the 100 subscriber milestone video, because spring break is now upon me, so I can finally do that. And I also have to work on the Shizune Hakamichi video that I promised my friends I would do like a year and a half ago on my birthday, and I still haven't done it. So, bang.